Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions from the worlds of TV, film, pop culture, social media, sports, news, music, everything really, depending on the guest. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest is an actor, stars in a lot of movies and other cool things. She will star, most recently she will star, that comes out in November, in Last 3 Days. We're with Deborah Lee Smith. Deborah, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I mean, icebreaker question. I mean, whether, you're a writer, director, actor, performer, I mean, you're all storytellers. Like, that's what you do. When did Deborah Lee Smith decide she wanted to be a storyteller?
That's funny. Actually, I was a part of a debate club in junior high, and I was like a witness on the stand, and the person who taught theater at the junior high school, who was also there, and her son was the lawyer or something like that. And she came up to me afterwards and said, I think you would really like theater. You should audition for my play that's coming up in a couple weeks. And I did. And I got one of the leading roles at 12 and started theater. And pretty much I was hooked.
But I feel like that's kind of like where you learn your craft too, right? Like a lot of people on TV, like on television and on the movie screen right now, like started in acting in theater. Like I feel like that's where you learn your craft.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've had a very circuitous and strange path because I, did that. I did theater in high school. I went to college for theater. And then I actually moved to Australia and lived in Australia for 6 years and ran a very successful construction company. So, and then about 6 years ago, I moved back to LA. So I've had like 9 lives, I like to say.
Wow.
Already.
So you mentioned during quarantine, you had a few projects that are coming out. There's one that's coming up pretty soon with the last 3 days. Talk a little bit about that project.
Yeah. So Last 3 Days is a thriller. It's a neo-noir thriller. And it's basically about a cop who wakes up one day and the last 3 days of his life are gone, and his wife, who I play, are gone, and his partner is gone. And it's about him figuring out what has happened and, trying to get me back, basically.
Absolutely. It's those are the movies I feel like that are hot right now. Like the thriller, the horror, like the action. Like, have you noticed those genres are kind of like the talk of the town, so to speak?
I mean, I think that they're always the talk of the town, but I think the thing is that now, because everyone wants this escapism, that's what everyone is turning to. I had a movie that came out in June that I produced that is a, heavy indie drama about a very important subject. And we had 3 amazing leads, including Anna Camp and Joe Latrulio from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Stephen Strait. And that movie, it was really difficult to get that one out there because it's an indie drama. And even though the movie's incredible, there's so much going on right now that it's really hard to, grab people's attention with something like that.
And what I've noticed is you said, like an indie drama, and it's really heavy and intense. And I find funny because, I talked to my friend Katya Shannon, who directed and wrote a short film called Standstill, which is basically about, it's pretty terrified. It's like, it's not a horror movie, but it has its thriller moments where I'm trying to raise awareness about diabetes and, not having the insulin, and in traffic, the main character is like passing out basically.
Oh, interesting.
And she didn't like refer to it as like a horror, but I feel like there's a lot of things in the world that are very scary and real that like become like a horror film, like disguise, like a thriller disguise or like a drama disguise as a horror film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. Lots of layers there.
No, absolutely. In terms of like the movies that you like to kind of work on or projects you want to work on, what's kind of like your ideal project that you might not have had the chance to work on, or that you have had the chance to work on? Like, what are some projects that are really in your wheelhouse, Deborah?
I mean, I really love being physical. So I love, like action, And like with this one, I'm like the ingenue, I'm the wife, I'm not the action, hero. Although for some of our stunt days, because we didn't want Rob to get tired out, I would run the stunts before they would have him do it, just to like make sure that the stunt timing was right. So I've got some fun BTS with like me being Rob, who's my co-star in this. And but I was in a Star Wars short a couple years ago that like did really, really well. And I played a female Sith. And that was awesome. I loved it because I love choreography. I'm a dancer. And so just learning the sword fighting, and I mean, obviously lightsabers, but using swords, practicing that. And then we shot in Oregon in the middle of nowhere in like a backwoods farm. And I love that stuff. I love just like getting in the dirt, just grit and as dirty as possible. And yeah, that was super fun. So I would love to do something like that again.
And talk about a big brand. I mean, Star Wars is arguably one of the biggest brands on the planet. It's not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I played a female Sith, and it was one of the most fun characters that I've ever had, because Siths have such a multi-layered, aspect to their character. And so to play a female Sith in an actual Star Wars movie, that's like
was this a Star Wars short? Like was this based on?
So the Star Wars universe, they do short film competitions every year.
Yes.
And you are allowed to basically use their characters, use whatever you want in order to put something out there. We actually decided not to submit it because one of the things that you have to do is you have to use their music and all of that sort of stuff. And the film was so good that we wanted to just put it out as a short film. So we had it composed completely. Like we just put it out like a short, and we got a lot of press, a lot of views. It was really, really awesome.
I'm sure you have like partaken or know a little bit about one facet of the industry I find very fascinating is the film festival circuit, because I find that very interesting. Do you find the end goal of a film festival is changing every year, where it kind of, I remember talking to my dad about this, film festivals, back in the day where, you would present a film, people would watch it, then there's distribution opportunities and everything. Now it's more like of a networking thing.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's changing, right?
That's exactly what it is. Honestly, it's funny because my favorite film festival is the Austin Writers Film Festival. And I'm not necessarily, I've just finished my first feature, so I'm sort of a writer, but just dabbling in it. And that is just the best place to meet people. Everyone's so amazing. And yeah, I love just meeting people in general, and film festivals are definitely the place to do it.
Have you noticed that they're becoming more niche? Like there's horror film festivals. There's like film festivals specifically only for shorts. Because I've noticed there used to be like film festivals where there's like the short category and then the feature category. Like, are you noticing that they're becoming more niche?
I mean, I think that they are somewhat, mainly because there's so many. And so they need to figure out how they're going to, really pop out of the just darkness, because there's just so many. And I do think, also as well, because as a filmmaker myself, like to decide what I'm going to actually submit to, where my film is going to get the most traction, like that certainly comes into play as well. So yeah, I would definitely say so.
You mentioned you're a dancer, you're an actor. What are some learning experiences? Because every project you work on, you're always going to have learning experiences, whether you've been doing it for 1 year, whether you've been doing it for 10 years. As a dancer growing up, and then as an actor, what are some learning experiences that you could share with us that you've had in your experiences working?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you're right. Every single project you learn something new. I would say, going back to this one, to Last 3 Days, is because it was such an action, focus, and it's still an indie film. Like this is still a low budget indie film. And so we really had to be as creative as possible in order to make something look like a multi-million-dollar huge budget film, even though it's not.
Yeah.
So definitely, thinking outside the box is something I always love to do. And I think that's one of the best parts about filmmaking. And that was definitely something we had to do for this one. I
mean, thinking outside the box, I mean, there's one of those things too, where I think, there comes a time where, people have people try very hard to be creative and they overthink it. You know what I mean? And sometimes it can be counterproductive as well.
Yeah. And I would say, like the thing that I think is the most important is for any filmmaker or anyone who's involved in storytelling at all, whether you're an actor or a director or a writer or whatever, shoot, like, I know that everyone says always like shoot your own short film, like blah, 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 blah. Okay. Yes, that's true. But I would say that the reason why that's so important is knowing the importance of voiceover sometimes, the importance of an extra, like an extra shot that you just, get as an establishing shot that makes a world of difference. And you have no idea like how much those tiny little filmmaking things will actually make a difference until you film yourself. And so I think that that's the sort of thing, like when you have to edit and like be in the editing bay and see why, those decisions are made, I think that just makes such a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. It is crazy for sure.
Yeah.
Deborah, thank you so much for coming on the show to chat a little bit. I really enjoyed it.
I know, me too. Really
so plug away. I mean, the last 3 days, people are going to be able to check that out in November.
Yeah, so Last 3 Days comes out November 13th. You can pre-order it now. It's on Apple TV. I'm sure it'll go to other platforms in the future. And you can follow me on Instagram, and you can follow Last 3 Days on Instagram. And we've been posting some really fun, behind the scenes shots and stuff like that.
It's wild though, like the streaming services, like, because you mentioned, who knows, like in a couple, it might be on other streaming services. Like it's crazy how many there are.
It is. And, it's funny because like with the film that came out in June, we started on some and now we're expanding to others based on all sorts of different things. And that's just what distribution is now, is we can sort of just go all over. It's, Pandora's box.
Amazing. No, that's awesome. And people can follow you on social media as well?
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I post all sorts of stuff, lots of pictures of my dog. I have a mental health organization and I talk about that on there as well. So all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh, great. No, for sure. Well, thank you so much and good luck with the release of Last 3 Days. Everyone's going to have a chance to check it out in November. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Deborah Lee Smith and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.